Today I'm going to cover the most common reverse dieting mistakes that I see people make so you can avoid them and create reverse diet success. Hey, this is Colin DeWaay. If you want to master your metabolism and create forever results, start now by subscribing and click on that bell notification so you don't miss anything. So there's several common mistakes a lot of people make when reverse dieting, but make sure you stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to go in no particular order here. And I want to make sure that you don't make any of these mistakes to make sure that you're avoiding as much weight gain as possible and setting yourself up for a well-improved metabolism. So the first mistake I want to cover is not holding the higher calories long enough before going back into a dieting phase. Honestly, lack of patience is probably the #1 destroyer of people's metabolisms anyway, and especially if you have a long history of dieting, if you don't give your body enough time to recover, your body will not respond and you'll have to start all over again. I can't tell you the number of people who have DM'd me and said something along the lines of, hey, I have a long history of dieting, but I reverse dieted for 3 months and I got my calories up to X amount, and then I started my cut, but my body's not responding, I'm not losing weight. Did I do something wrong? And the answer is basically yes, you didn't give your body enough time. You have to understand it's not just about getting your calories up, it's about getting them up and then holding them and giving your body enough time to adapt before you can cut your calories again. If you just get them up and then immediately slash them, you've basically accomplished nothing metabolically. In fact, I would actually argue that length of time out of a calorie deficit is actually more important than how high you get your calories in the reverse. Now, of course, everyone's different and there's a lot of different factors, but I honestly think that most people need to spend at least 6 months to a year with higher calories to make sure that they put their body in a good enough position to see some results again, and understand that the longer your history of dieting is and the more aggressive it is, the longer you need to recover your metabolism. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be increasing them that entire time, but you do want to get them into a good place and then hold them for a long time before slashing your calories again. Lack of patience is the very thing that got you into this, so don't let lack of patience be the very thing that keeps you from fixing it too. The more patient you can be and the more time you take reverse dieting, the better off you'll be long term and the better your body will respond when it's time to cut again. Now, the second common mistake I want to talk about falls fairly well in line with the first one, and that is bailing on your reverse because you're gaining more weight than you're comfortable with and going right back into the dieting again. If you're in a position where you're in a reverse diet and your calories are still low and you're actually gaining on them, understand that means you're in a calorie surplus. So if you stop the process and go back to cutting, you have to cut a dramatic amount of calories to get into an actual calorie deficit again. And the fact that you're gaining on these calories is all the more reason to show that your metabolism is in a bad place and in desperate need of fixing. Don't get me wrong, I get it. You don't want to gain weight, and if you start gaining more than you're comfortable with, it's a really hard thing to stick with, but it's so important. If you haven't gotten your metabolism back into a better spot and you jump back into the low calories again, your body will not respond. You will have undid all the progress you made in that reverse. Once you get down again, you'll have to start the reverse all over, but you'll be starting from an even heavier spot than you were last time, and that's really defeating. If you're gaining faster than you want, you can always back off your calories a little bit, and just remember that the slower you increase your calories, the less likely you are to gain weight, and the faster you increase them, the more likely you are to gain weight. And that brings me to the third mistake I see a lot of people make, and that's increasing calories way too fast. A lot of people who reach out and say they're gaining weight faster than they want to also say something along the lines of, I'm increasing my calories 100 to 150 every single week. And that's a very aggressive increase in calories, at least if you want to keep body fat in check as much as possible. It doesn't mean you can't ever make that big of an increase, and there's certain times where it actually makes a lot of sense to do so, such as the end of a dieting phase and going into a reverse, or if you're actually losing weight during the process. It also matters what's most important to you because there's trade-off here. The faster you increase your calories, the faster you're going to improve your metabolism, but at the same time, the more likely you are to gain body fat during the process. The slower you increase your calories, the longer it's going to take to improve your metabolism, but at the same time, you're less likely to gain additional body fat this way. Now, there's no right or wrong answers here, but I do want to state that it's pretty rare for people to be okay with gaining the additional body weight, even if they say they are. I've had a lot of people who say, I'm okay with gaining a little bit more weight, but then when you actually go through it and actually see that weight gain, they kind of start freaking out, and it's a totally different story. And this is why I generally suggest a slower pace for more people, usually somewhere around 30 to 60 calories depending on how things are going, which that actually brings me to the fourth mistake I want to talk about. And that's making the exact same calorie increase every single week, no matter how the process is going. I personally suggest that you make different adjustments depending on how the previous week went, rather than just some static increase. Now that doesn't mean you can't increase your calories like 40 or 50 every single week, and that can honestly be a really good approach for a lot of people. However, at the same time, if you want to minimize fat gain as much as possible, I personally think it's better to take whatever your body gives you. Your body will adapt at different rates at different times, so if you keep trying to force calories when it's not there, you can make it much more likely to gain body fat. To me, what would be a better approach is, if you're gaining more weight than you're comfortable with, is to hold those calories or make really minimal changes to allow the body to adapt a little bit more before forcing more calories. I'll sometimes give people as small of a change as like 5 carbs for the week, and it's something that you won't really even realize is happening, your body won't recognize, but at least keeps the process going a little bit. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with just holding calories steady either. On the flip side of things, if you're losing weight during the process, then it's not a bad idea to make more aggressive increases and increase calories at a faster rate. That being said, even in this scenario, I still think for a lot of people it makes sense to keep the more moderate approach, because there can be some real nice mental benefits to seeing weight loss during the process, and it can really help with buy-in if you're losing weight while increasing calories. If you've been watching the client reverse diet series I have, where I'm taking one of my clients through the actual process of the reverse, you will have seen that we made different increases week by week depending on how the previous week went, which, by the way, if you have missed some of that and you want to get caught up, I have a whole series playlist on my channel you can go check out and get caught up. And on top of that, I have my own personal reverse diet I went through that was coached by Paul Ravel you can check out as well. The fifth common mistake I see a lot of people make is actually increasing their cardio as they increase their calories to try to avoid weight gain. I kind of relate this to almost trying to find loopholes in reverse dieting. If you do this, all you're basically doing is trading increasing your calories for more expenditure, but your net difference is zero, and you're not really improving your metabolism at all. Sure, you may get your calories nice and high this way, and you may avoid more weight gain during the process, but the problem is now your body has adapted to all this additional cardio, and that's your starting point for when you start your cut. Think of it this way: if you're doing an hour of cardio every single day at the end of your reverse, what are you going to do when it's time to cut? Sure, you can slash your calories, but that's only going to get you so far, and you can only go so low, and since you're already doing a ton of cardio, you kind of have nowhere to go. You want to get your calories as high as possible and your cardio as low as possible by the end of your reverse, although when I say that, I mean within reason. Now, there's a lot of different scenarios, and it all depends on many different things. However, I do find that it's a good idea for most people to keep about 30 to 60 minutes of cardio in by the end of the reverse. You just don't want it to be excessive unless you just truly love cardio and want it to be a big part of your life. You just have to understand what that means for you and the trade-off that you give by doing so. I also used to be all about trying to get ridiculous amounts of calories in and just getting them as high as possible, but I've also backed off that approach a little bit as well. Don't get me wrong, there is benefit of having higher calories, but the higher your calories get, the more you're going to be pushing your metabolic limit as well, and increasing the danger of gaining more weight than you want to. Plus, while there is benefit of having your calories a little bit higher, it's not nearly as beneficial, in my opinion, as length of time not dieting, as I mentioned earlier. So try to get them into as good a place as possible, but don't feel like you have to force them into some arbitrary number, and whatever seems like a lot of food for you probably is, and it's different for everyone based on your own personal genetics. Now, the sixth common mistake I see a lot of people make is lack of adherence to the plan, because they have the mindset of, well, I'm going to gain weight anyways, so what's the point? This thought process absolutely kills people, and I'm telling you, everyone that I know who has a really good reverse diet is someone who strongly adheres to the plan and stays diligent just like they would in a cut. I'm not a promoter of chasing perfection by any stretch of the imagination, but I can say at the same time, the people who always get their calories the highest and maintain their weight the best are always the people who stay true to their macros regardless of what phase they're in. In fact, the irony here is, if you want to eat a lot of food, by being patient and not eating more calories during the reverse than you're supposed to, this is how you eventually get to a spot where you do get to eat a lot of food and do it while weighing less than you would if you overate on the lower calories. I'll explain what I mean here. If you're more diligent to the plan, you're less likely to gain weight. If you don't gain weight, you're more likely to be able to increase your calories. But if you keep overeating your set calories, then you're more likely to gain weight. And if you gain weight, you can't increase your calories. And if you can't increase your calories, they stay low and you keep overeating, and you get in a spot where you just keep gaining weight, but you don't actually get your calories up. If you stay patient, keep hitting your numbers, this is how you can potentially get into a spot where you're eating a lot of food and maintaining your weight fairly well. There's no promises here, but the chances go up dramatically if you adhere to the plan well. You actually saw this with my client Vivian's reverse diet, where she actually got her calories up by over 800 from the start and was actually down in weight for a very long time. And this is also how you saw me get up over 400 grams of carbs in my last reverse. Remember, when you're reverse dieting, you're already at maintenance or even a small surplus of calories. So if you go over that, it's gonna put you well into a surplus. So don't fall into the all or nothing approach or screw it, who cares, F it mentality. It absolutely makes the process go horribly. So I'm sure you have a lot of questions about reverse dieting, and I'm happy to answer whatever you have. But what I would recommend you doing first, if you haven't checked it out yet, check out this video, as I not only break down why you need to reverse diet and why it works, but I also give you all the details you're probably wondering about, from how to set up your own macros, how long you should reverse diet based on your own personal dieting history, how high you should get your calories, and how to know how fast you should increase your calories during the process. Everything you need to know is in that video, so check that out, and I will see you next time.